Hello everyone, welcome back to Amy's Bookshelf. If you follow me on Instagram, then you might have seen this post recently where I joked about the fact I have run out of room on my shelves, which is very true. You can't see completely here, but basically it's, floor to ceiling pretty much bookshelves all the way to the bottom, and there is now no room left. I do try and periodically either unhaul books or like give them to other people or just like try and stay on top of it, but I find it very hard. And interestingly, on that post somebody asked me like, how do I decide which books to unhaul, like what's my kind of process? So I thought I would talk a little bit about this on the video and then show you the books that I am going to unhaul. I went through all of my shelves this morning. I needed to kind of rearrange them because a lot of them weren't in order anymore. They're in alphabetical order by author's last name, and they're all a bit all over the place because I'd taken some off to do content and then just shoved them back on any which way. So I went through them all and rearranged them and then found some books I'm going to get rid of. And yeah, I thought I'd just talk to you a little bit about why I'm going to get rid of them and like what I think about when I think about what books to get rid of. You might find this video really boring, but some people might find it interesting. So I thought I'd film it because why not? So yeah, I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 books I'm going to get rid of, which is pretty good. So yeah, like I said, you might find this really boring, but we'll see. So actually first up is a set of books that isn't from that 11, but I wanted to talk about it because I mentioned it in a different video. I think that I did either at the beginning of this year or maybe last year. No, it was at the beginning of this year, where I counted all of the books that I own and tried to unhaul some. So like I said, I do try and do it periodically, and this was a set of books I mentioned because I didn't get rid of them then, but I said in the video if I haven't read them by this time next year then I'm going to unhaul them, and that is the Twilight series. Now I read the first one and then I read I think half of the second one, but I don't remember finishing it, and then I haven't read any of the others. And this is a really nice like edition, nice sort of like box set. That's all the covers, very minimalist. And I actually had a friend who messaged me and said, if you are going to get rid of them, can I have them? So I'm going to give them to her because it's not quite been a year, but I'm not going to read them. I don't see myself picking them up, and they're like so widely available, the Twilight books, that if in 5 years I decide, oh my gosh, I really want to read those books, I can just get more. I'm sure I could find them in charity shops probably, or secondhand somewhere. So I think it's about time I let these go because they take up a lot of room on my shelf. Yeah, so that is the first one. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the 11 that I am going to unhaul, but before I do that I kind of wanted to go over a few of the considerations I have when I'm deciding whether I want to unhaul a book. So firstly, if I have read a book, then the two main things will be, am I going to ever reread it? And if not, will I use it in content? Now, I know that kind of sounds like a bit of an icky influencer thing to say, but it genuinely is a consideration for me because I take a lot of pictures of books, I take a lot of videos of books, and like one of my big things on social media is giving people recommendations, and so I want to kind of have that book to hand in order to recommend it to people. So a lot of books, even though I know I'm not going to read them again, I generally do keep them so that I can include them in videos and pictures and things like that, and also so I can lend them to friends. I lend a lot of my books out to my friends, and if it's a book I enjoyed or I think that they're going to enjoy, then I will keep it so I can lend it to them and they can give it back. And yeah, then it's kind of nice to just share your books about. If I haven't read it, then it will be, will I use it in content, like books I'm looking forward to reading, books that have been on my TBR for ages that I haven't read yet, that kind of content. And then also, am I ever actually going to read it? Because I definitely buy books with the complete honest intention of reading it, and it's 3 years later and I've never gravitated towards it when I put together my monthly TBRs. And I think if I've owned it for, well, if I owned it over a year and I haven't picked it up, there's got to be a reason. And then, you know, sometimes if it's like, say for example, a Christmas book, they take me a little longer to get through because I kind of only read those in December, so it might take me a few years to get to all of them. But otherwise I kind of have to really consider, like, why haven't I picked it up? There must be a reason. So I think they're like the main considerations, but I'll kind of go through all of these books one by one and you can get a bit more of an idea about why I am getting rid of them. Right, so the first four I'm going to like group together in this list. They are Lessons in Love, The Magpie Society, Difficult Women, and Yes, Yes, More, More. Now, I have read two of these. So I've read Yes, Yes, More, More, and I have read The Magpie Society. Read those two. And I haven't read these two. Now, the reason I'm grouping these together is because these are all proofs. If you don't know what a proof copy of a book is, it is a book that publishers print and give mainly to like content creators or to people who are reading the books before it is published so that they can get an early copy. So these books I got before these books were published. And if you kind of have a look at them, they're not finished. So this isn't the official cover of the book, and it generally has like the date that it's being published on the top, and so yeah, they're not like finished versions of the books, and sometimes they have like typos in them, or like in some way they're just not complete. So that is why they are in this section. I don't love proofs, to be honest. I don't often accept them because, one, I don't like having copies of books that aren't finished, that aren't like complete, that aren't like the finished cover. And also, this is probably a bad thing to say as a book influencer, but like I am not generally that bothered about reading books when they're published. There are very few books that I have like pre-ordered when they are being published, or that I have bought immediately as soon as they are out on general sale, because like for me, I'm just not that bothered about like brand new books. And like even if I am excited about something, generally I normally wait till it comes out in paperback anyway, because I'm not a big fan of hardbacks, or like I'll wait till it's in the library or borrow it from a friend if they have it. Like I'm just not that keen on reading things like early, so I don't really ever accept many proofs. And like I said, I don't really enjoy having books that don't have the final cover. Again, from like a very icky influencer point of view, I then can't really include that in content because the front cover of it is either like incomplete or doesn't have the title. A good example actually is this. So an author called Lauren Ho, who I really like, sent me this because I really liked her last book. I spoke about it loads on Instagram, and she asked if I wanted a copy of her new one, and I did really want to read it. The problem is the copy I have, that is the front cover, so you cannot see the title. There's the title on the spine, but you can't see the title at all on the front. So like I can't use this in content, because if I put that in a picture, you'd have no idea what book that was. So I think that's why I don't love them. I'm not getting rid of this one because I really love her and her books, but if it's a book that I know probably not going to read again or read at all, I don't really need to own the proofs, so I'm going to get rid of these. And also I probably won't give these to a charity shop, because it's not really good practice to give proofs to charity shops, because they're not supposed to be on like general sale, because like I said, they have mistakes in them or they have things in them that aren't finished. So the general practice is not to like sell them on or give them to charity shops. So I would probably just recycle these unless I have any friends who do want to read them. Okay, then the next like category in this pile is books that I haven't read but I know I am not going to read. And there's actually only one in this, and that is Hazards of Time Travel by Joyce Carol Oates. Now I started trying to read this I think last year, and I did not get very far at all. There is still a bookmark in it. I did not get very far at all. Like I think there are two bookmarks in this. I think like less than 100 pages. I didn't get far at all. It was a very confusing plot. I didn't really understand the like time travel element of it, and I wasn't gripped at all. Like I didn't care about what was happening, and I didn't find myself picking up again. So I did end up DNFing it, and I am just not going to read this again. It's not something I'm like bothered about reading, or a book that like I'm really determined to get through so I can have an opinion on it or like talk about it. It just doesn't tick any of those boxes. So I think ultimately the best thing to do is to donate it, because it's just going to sit there, and like I said, I'm not going to include it in content. I'm probably not going to read it ever, so it's probably just for the best if I unhaul this. Okay, and then the final category, which is the majority of the books, are books I have read but I am going to get rid of. If I start off with The Tattooist of Auschwitz, this is by Heather Morris, and this was a really popular book. Like I think I read this back in probably 2019, and it was everywhere when I read it. So many people were like talking about it and reading it and like loving it, so so I really wanted to read it to sort of be part of that. And I remember reading it and enjoying it. I don't think I gave it 5 stars, but like, you know, I did enjoy it. But since then, I think it's become quite obvious that there are people who have a lot of issues with the book, with like how the research was done, with how it portrays the characters and the people in the book. So it's set in a concentration camp during World War II, which is already a very tricky topic to write a fictional book about. And so because of that, similarly, like on a similar theme to everything else I've been talking about, I'm not going to include this in my content. It's not a book that I see myself recommending, because I do think that it carries this not controversy, that maybe is a bit too of a stronger word, but it's really important to me not to talk about books on my channels that I feel people are offended or hurt by. And honestly, like a book like The Tattooist of Auschwitz, which was so incredibly popular, doesn't really need me talking about it as well. There are so many people who have done reviews, and really interesting, nuanced and well-researched reviews as well, that would have much more of a weighted opinion than I could ever have on this book. So like I said, I'm not going to include it in any content. I'm definitely not going to reread it again, so there is just no point in me owning it anymore. So I'm going to unhaul it. Then we have Leanne Moriarty's 9 Perfect Strangers. I was actually sent this because when the Amazon Prime TV adaptation of the book came out, I was asked to talk about it on my Instagram, and so they sent me a copy of the book so I could read the book in anticipation of talking about the TV show. Now, I think the adaptation was really good, and actually the book was pretty good as well. It's like a really interesting thriller with like a lot of tension, a lot of really 3-dimensional characters, and I was pretty gripped on the plot. So like I can't really criticise it much. But again, it's a book that I don't feel myself recommending. I don't really feel that I'm going to include it in any like recommendation videos or any like, I don't know where it would sit in certain categories, and I'm not going to reread it either. And it's also a book that I don't think a lot of my friends would enjoy. Like I can't see any of them really wanting to read it. So it's just a book I don't really feel like I need to own anymore. So I'm going to unhaul it. Then this is a book I read, I think at the beginning of this year actually. It's called Less by Andrew Sean Greer, and I really didn't like it. I found it incredibly boring, and I didn't really understand the point of it. I'm not sure I was really the right person to like really digest the plot or like the point of the book, and I think I just missed the point of it completely. So it's not a book that I ever recommend to people or talk about online. It's not a book I would see myself putting in any recommendation videos or like any wrap-ups or anything like that. So again, I just don't really see the point in me owning it anymore. And again, I don't think any of my friends would enjoy it either, and I don't think I'm going to miss it on my bookshelf. Similarly, Somebody Loves You by Mona Archie. I got a copy of this when I went to a bookshop opening in London because Mona was actually there talking about the book, and I really loved listening to her talk about it. So it's written in like poetry prose, and it was a really fascinating way to tell the story, but ultimately I think it's quite a forgettable book, and it's not one that I think I would recommend to people, just because I don't even know where I would put it in terms of like genre or category, or like there's no list that I would include it in, so I don't think it's something that I feel the need to keep, although I do really love this cover. I think that is a really, really beautiful book. But yeah, I just don't think I'm going to miss it, similarly to Less, so I don't see the need to own it anymore. Similarly, a book I read last year, which is Unsheltered by Barbara Kingsolver. This is chunky. This is like historical fiction and contemporary, which was really cool, but it was so long, and like all of the characters in this book are incredibly unlikable, so I was not invested at all, and there is no reason it should have been this long. I think this author is pretty popular. I know I've seen her books out and about in bookshops, and I would be tempted to read something else by her, but this is not a book I'm ever going to read again, nor is it a book I'm going to recommend to anybody, because I just didn't enjoy it. So there's no point in me owning it, and I don't think that I'm going to miss it. I don't think I'm ever going to like wonder where this book has gone if I give it away. So I think that's a good enough reason. If you do have any other books you've read by her that you like, please do let me know, because I didn't hate the writing style. I thought she was a really good writer. I just didn't like the characters, and like I said, it was way too long. So if there's something shorter that's maybe a little bit more gripping, then I think I would give it a go. Okay, and finally my most controversial one, which is Birdsong by Sebastian Faulks. Now, when I was at uni, probably like first, second second and third year of uni actually, if you asked me what my favourite book was, I probably would have said Birdsong, which is why it's quite controversial that I'm going to unhaul it. But in a very similar vein to all of these books, it's not a book I recommend. It's not a book that I ever talk about online, because in all honesty, I read it such a long time ago, I barely remember the details of it anyway. It's also quite like heavy, it's set during World War I, so there's like a lot of really difficult themes and difficult scenes in it as well. So I never talk about it in like recommendations or wrap up videos, and I'm definitely not going to reread it either, because I've grown so much as a reader since I read this that I know this wouldn't be a 5-star read for me anymore. I know I would read it and think, no, I've read better books than this, because I've changed a lot since I read it. I must have read it, I think, like maybe 2013, so like 10 years ago, and I've changed so much as a reader, and like my taste has changed so much that I know I wouldn't love this as much as I did when I first read it. And you know, it's a popular book. I'm sure someone would appreciate picking it up in a charity shop, and I'm really just not going to miss it, so I think it's time I let it go. So that is all of them. Like I said, 11 books, which I think is pretty good going. That is very helpful for my shelves. Yeah, if you found that interesting, then great. And if you found it boring, then you'll just have to wait for my next video and hope it's a little bit more interesting. But yeah, I think it is always interesting to see how people decide which books they're going to keep, and I think everybody's reasons are a little bit different. And like I said from many times in this video, like me being a content creator definitely factors into the books that I am going to keep or not. I think from somebody who isn't a content creator, that might seem like a really wild reason to keep a book, especially for people who find owning this many books crazy already. But anyway, I hope you have enjoyed the video, and yeah, if you have, please like it and please subscribe to my channel. I'll have some new Christmassy content coming for you next month, which I'm really excited about, some cozy videos, and also I will start doing my like yearly stats wrap-ups, best books I read this year, worst books I read this year, how many books I read this year, so yeah, you can look forward to that. Yeah, and I will see you next time. Bye!